The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
Good evening, I'm Chris Bury. Tonight, a closer look at a modern-day gold rush right here in Illinois. In this case, the gold is sand. About 90 miles southwest of Chicago, companies are snapping up farmland to mine silica sand, a key ingredient in fracking, the hydraulic fracturing of rock to produce oil and gas. Fracking has not yet arrived in Illinois, but the State Department of Natural Resources is finalizing rules that would allow it to happen. Meanwhile, critics say the rush to dig up tons of sand is posing risks to health and to the environment. And some Illinois residents worry the expansion of sand mining could jeopardize a lifestyle that's part of the American fabric.
This home was my grandfather's.
58-year-old Rick Coleman has lived on this farm north of Utica, Illinois for most of his life. His family has farmed the same land since the 1800s.
We're devastated that we're going to possibly lose our home or have to move.
The wide open spaces of LaSalle County have turned into a battlefield, pitting farmers such as Coleman against sand mine companies. The sand underneath these farm fields is suddenly worth far more than the 20 or 30 feet of dirt above it. Last year, the owners of a proposed sand mine next to Coleman's farm offered to buy him out. His answer was a firm no.
I don't want to sell the family farm, my home, my legacy, and move away to an apartment in some town somewhere that I have to live in so you can make $2 billion off of the sand on that property. And I says, I'm going to fight you. So that's what I'm doing.
Just a couple of miles down the road lives Larry Flynn, who farms 160 acres right next to a recently built sand mine.
You know, some of them blasts, they rumble pretty good. The house shakes and the dogs take off running, you know.
Flynn's farm has been in his family for more than 100 years. But now with the sand mine right next door and another one being planned across the road, he doesn't think agriculture stands much of a chance anymore in the Utica area.
They say they reclaim it, but you get up on an airplane around here, you don't see none of them reclaimed. You know, just a hole in the ground.
And so we did board a small airplane with pilot and local business owner Norb Dudek as our guide.
Hey, we're ready to go.
From the air, the landscape in the Utica area is pockmarked with sand mines, many of them abandoned years ago, some currently in operation. Vast areas of once fertile farmland have been reduced to unusable sand pits, accompanied by polluted ponds of water.
There is no place for tourism, you know, to expand for tourism with hotels, whatever, businesses.
When you get off of Route 80 coming into Utica, the first thing you pass is an asphalt plant. If you're coming in off of 80, it's never stopped the tourists from coming in.
Gloria Alvarado is the mayor of North Utica. She and the village board voted in favor of sand mine expansion, despite a unanimous vote against it by the Utica Planning Commission.
Well, I'm a supporter of economic development, and the sand mines are bringing good-paying jobs to the area.
Nearby Starved Rock State Park draws about 2 million visitors a year. Many local businesses in Utica's tiny downtown depend heavily on tourism. A few business owners told us they're concerned that more mining will kill tourism, but nobody wanted to go on camera to talk about it. Besides tourism, sand mining has been the major industry for more than a century. This small town of about 1,300 people sits on top of a massive sandstone formation called St. Peter. It stretches from Arkansas to Minnesota. This formation produces silica sand used to make windshields, bathroom fixtures, and other glassware.
We have now moved more predominantly into sand used as proppants in hydraulic fracturing.
Bill McTee is the plant manager for Unimin in Utica. employing about 95 people and currently producing 2 million tons of silica sand every year. The company plans to double that by 2015. While no fracking operations are now underway in Illinois, Unimin has been supplying the fracking industry across the country with silica sand for at least 10 years.
We can reach a lot of different locations very efficiently and very economically from this location.
Fracking, or hydraulic fracturing, begins by drilling straight down, then drilling horizontally through shale deposits. Large quantities of water, chemicals, and sand are pumped down the wells under high pressure, causing fractures in the shale, releasing natural gas and oil trapped in the rock. The oil and gas industry will use about 95 billion pounds of silica sand this year for fracking, an increase of 30% over last year. The value has skyrocketed. The sand now sells for between $60 and $90 a ton, nearly $40 higher than 3 years ago. And mining companies are snapping up farmland trying to cash in. Diane Gassman and some of her neighbors who live in a serene setting just outside the Utica city limits suddenly find themselves surrounded.
This is all sand mine. So we live in the middle, and this is all sand mine.
Diane's husband, Phil, an avid biker, worries most about the silica sand dust in the air.
When you get a heavy wind, a big wind, you can feel it and see it.
Just north of town, Monty and Mary Whipple own 500 acres across the road from the Coleman's farm. Mary sums up the dilemma for many in Utica with a rhetorical question.
Do you want us to continue to be the #1 producer and exporter of agriculture products, or are you looking for LaSalle County to become the sand capital of Illinois?
And today we're joined by Julie Wernow, energy and green technology reporter for the Chicago Tribune, Mark Denzler, Vice President and COO of the Illinois Manufacturers Association, and State Senator for the 38th District, Sue Rezin. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Julie, you've spent a lot of time in LaSalle County. Give us a sense of how contentious this is.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me to hear that people didn't want to go on camera to talk about the tourism. I mean, we have people down there who, grew up together, went to school together, who won't even acknowledge each other in town over this sand mining issue.
Because there's bad blood.
There's bad blood. The village deciding to expand the sand mines was very controversial for the people who were sort of left behind, the people who became sort of islands in this whole thing where they're surrounded by sand mines, but they don't really have a say over that vote.
And as I understand it, the village okayed it after the county had banned it. Is that correct?
That's right. In Illinois, you can annex in this unincorporated land, which, of course, the village is thinking, well, we're going to make some good money off of this. And so they annex in the land for the sand mining and kind of are able to get around this moratorium that happened in the county.
Mark, we heard that rhetorical question posed at the end of the report, agriculture or sand mining. For the farmers, how can they possibly resist the kind of money that's being tossed around?
Well, it's a good question, and it's really a private property right that every farmer or landowner can make that decision. Do they want to continue in agriculture? Do they want to sell to the sand mines? And I think it's important to remember that sand mining has been occurring in that area for 150 years. So it's not anything that's brand new to there. It's something that's been going on for a very long time, and I would suggest it's probably already been the sand capital of Illinois for decades. And so every property owner can make that decision about whether they want to sell or they want to continue farming.
You say it's been the sand capital for a while, but there are two important differences. Now they're talking about expanding it, and secondly, the price, as we saw, is just going through the roof.
It absolutely is. It's economic development, and the local residents can make the decision. The county made one decision, and the local municipality made a separate decision, each weighing the factors. And again, it's a local decision, not made at the state level or federal level, but local officials making that decision.
So, Senator, you're in kind of a difficult position. You represent this area, and obviously, as we've heard, tensions are running high. There are strong arguments on both sides. So where do you come down on the question of sand mining for fracking?
Well, the point that needs to be made is that the two biggest industries in the area is agriculture and mining. So mining has been there for decades. Silica sand mining has been there for decades. Now, Having said that, much of the silica sand is being shipped to Texas and Pennsylvania as we speak. So the market's already there and it's been created.
Where do you stand in terms of supporting this expansion of sand mining that's going on in LaSalle County now?
Well, again, I am trying to be the good policymaker in the middle to make sure.
So you haven't made up your mind yet?
Well, you know, again, this is everything that we're talking about in terms of property rights for the farmers. It is a local issue. In terms of the local communities deciding whether to annex in or not, whether the county has the ability to pass a moratorium on fracking, or excuse me, sand mining, which they did, that's a local issue.
But I'm trying to get at where you stand.
Correct. Well, from my perspective, again, I'm trying to make sure that we can cohabitate together and make sure that the people who have concerns in the area, and there are very, very valid concerns, make sure that we have the safeguards in place to protect them.
Julie, talk a little bit about the money that's involved and the role that it's playing in the decision making.
Yeah, I will say that, you know, they're absolutely right. There's been mining there for quite some time. The difference is what we're finding is that now there's vastly more land being bought up by mining companies. In just the past 5 years, we've seen an area the size of Starved Rock added to the holdings of these mining companies. And of course, the reason is there's money in this sand. I mean, it really is gold. This isn't the kind of sand that you have on the beach. This is this perfect circular hard sand that, you know, can sell, it said $90 a ton, it can sell up to $110 a ton, and there's a lot of that's profit. And so you've got money for the mining companies, but you also have money for the villages. These mining companies are coming and saying, if you annex our land, we'll give you a one-time impact fee, $500,000, 20 cents a ton to start for the sand. And then at the same time, the farmers are being told, you can pay, will pay you much more than what your farmland is worth as farmland for this mining. So there's a lot of money at stake and jobs.
In terms of that trade-off, Mark, we heard some concern expressed about tourism because Starved Rock State Park is there, one of the most popular state parks in Illinois, especially for people from Chicago. What about those concerns?
Well, you know, I think Starved Rock is beautiful, and I think we heard the mayor of Utica in the clip mention that, you know, sand mining's been going on for decades and tourists continue to come. And again, I think one of the things that the senator pointed out that's important to note is the environmental protections are in place. And so whether it's road transportation or dust or fugitive dust, and there's been some extensive studies done, particularly in Wisconsin and elsewhere. It's important to keep in mind that all of these companies have to meet both federal and state laws. And there's a host of them impacting air emissions, water emissions. And so they're good partners. They want to be good neighbors. They want to try to work with the local community. And I think that both can exist together. I think you can continue to have Starved Rock, bring tourism in, while you continue to develop the economy by expanding the sand mining.
Senator, what about those concerns for tourism? Founded, unfounded?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's something we need to look at, and it is a concern of mine in terms of the traffic impact in the area. And so, you know, in the past, we've been mining, like I say, for decades, but the concern is the huge concentration of companies coming in wanting to mine because of what's going on nationally with frack sand and fracking. I do believe that the traffic needs to be looked at as regionally. Currently, when mines come in or companies come in, they work with the local municipality and they do their own traffic study. So they're good stewards in that way. But being that we potentially are going to have a huge concentrated area of mines, the traffic impact is going to be much more than, you know, just one mine coming in. So I do think it's important to look at the traffic patterns regionally. And many concerns are, there's one, basically, you know, people get off Interstate 80 and go to Starved Rock. Can that huge concentration of mining and the traffic impact cohabitate with the cars coming into Starved Rock? I'm not sure I'm convinced that it can.
That traffic is just one of the many concerns, and many people living and working in the Utica area are voicing complaints about noise and air pollution caused by this expansion of sand mining. Here's what a few people living and working in the area had to say.
I feel that we have to be extremely cautious from the standpoint of the amount of what's called fugitive dust getting into the air from the sand pits and blowing in different directions, depending, of course, on which direction the wind is blowing.
The beeping noise is the one that gets you, if you want to know the truth.
it's a constant assault on our lives every day. You know, blasting, noise, light, dust, traffic. You know, it just doesn't seem to stop.
So there are a lot of concerns. And Julia, what particularly about the health concerns, breathing the sand silica dust?
Well, yes, a lot of the concerns come from the truck traffic. So just one of these mines, you're going to be seeing somewhere between 11 and 15 truckloads of sand coming out an hour. So a lot of people are concerned about what if some of this sand, you know, blows off into the air, and particularly the folks who are living right next to the mines, where, you know, essentially this sand, if it gets in your lungs, it's like glass. So it can cause, there's all sorts of conditions and cancer, and so that's a big concern for residents.
So what are these companies doing, Mark, to safeguard the residents and the workers against this? Because, as Julie mentioned, this can be serious. I mean, silicosis is a very serious disease, which has been associated in other places with sand mines.
Well, and I'm glad we're focused on the environmental issue, because it is important, and the companies have to follow OSHA standards and others. And if you look, Chris, at Wisconsin's a great example. They have a lot of silica mining up there. Their Department of Natural Resources did a pretty extensive study. They looked at 1,200 sources and studies of PM2, particulate matter 10. PM10, it's a standard the size of the granule of the dust. And the US EPA has a pretty strict standard on that. And in the 1,200 samples in Wisconsin, every single sample fell below the US EPA requirement. And as a matter of fact, the highest sample tested was 30% lower than the federal threshold. So it's important to keep in mind that these companies have to meet these federal laws. They have to meet the state standards. They have to get the permits. They have to be good operators, and we certainly want to make sure they're good operators. If someone's not operating in compliance with the law, then they should have their permit revoked, for example. But the environmental impact is one issue that these companies all take very seriously, because they can face shutdown, significant fines, penalties, and the like.
Senator, you represent that man on the bike who's worried about breathing in the silica dust. What do you tell him?
Well, and again, the issue is that in regards to air and water, they are regulated by the EPA. Many of these trucks that go out, they are contained, they're self-contained. So when the sand goes into the truck, because that load has to be certified by the company before it's delivered to the end user, they make sure that no other contaminants get in it. So there is a top on the truck. But one important fact to know is the largest particulate in the air in LaSalle County is from agriculture. And the second largest is from road. You know, Interstate 80 goes there, and there's a lot of traffic in the area, and we also have truck stops. So just simply saying we need to monitor the air, which I agree with, and on site we should, to protect the workers, and it is being done. But the challenge in general is, how do we make sure that we are monitoring the air just from the mines and not monitoring the air that also the particulates that's caused from the harvesting that's going on now, or the traffic that's going by.
And the traffic, Julie, as you said, I mean, you're talking trucks going, rumbling through 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah, I mean, these mines are going to be staffed, you know, with 4 shifts of 9 workers, 24 hours a day. You're talking about blasting. So, you know, there's significant operations. You know, this isn't sort of just a sand pit, but absolutely, there are permits that are required. They're also going to be using water to sort of keep the dust at bay, which is pretty typical of these kinds of mining operations.
So beyond the traffic and beyond the air, the other concern is the land. Once this land is mined for sand, can it ever be put? A lot of farmers seem to suggest that once it's mined, it's never going to be good for farming again.
Well, I mean, obviously it's mined after 45 years, you have a large hole, and then, you know, when a company comes in, they have to file a reclamation plan to show how they're going to close the mine safely. They also have to post a bond to make sure that it's done in case the company, for whatever reason, goes bankrupt, that the money is available to safely close the mines. Clearly, anytime we have economic industry that comes into the area that's taking farmland out of production, it's a huge concern for farmers. But at the end of the day, it is up to the farmer who owns the land. That's his right to decide how he uses that land.
But we've seen aerial pictures, Mark, of these former mines that are now abandoned. Not only in Illinois, you talked about Wisconsin as an issue there as well, where you have acres of land that had been turned into sand mines, and now it's sitting there with big lakes of polluted water.
Well, and I think the state EPA and the locals should hold these companies to account. If it is part of the permit and they have to reclaim and they have to restore that land, it can be done. And I think that's part of the permit conditions. And the other thing I think it's important to keep in mind, particularly in that area, you know, the sand's not used extensively or exclusively for fracturing. So if you look in LaSalle County area, there's a lot of cement plants because sand is a big part of that. One of the largest glass bottlers in the world is located. They make all the bottles for Miller Lite because sand is used. So the sand that comes out of there is used for a lot of industries, including in manufacturing. And you see in the clip, you know, the Caterpillar equipment. So it's got a broad economic ripple across the state of Illinois. And again, it can be done safely. It's been done safely for years. All the air studies show that they're significantly within federal law and federal statute. And so it can be done safely, and it's just incumbent upon the local officials and the state officials to make sure they're operating properly.
But Julie, isn't that farmland there among the most fertile farmland in the world?
That's right. You'll hear that statement over and over and over again if you spend time in LaSalle County. This is some very rich topsoil. And when you talk to the farmers there, this is a very emotional issue for them. I've sat in living rooms where people actually welled up talking about the idea of ripping this topsoil up to get the sand. So it's not an easy decision for a lot of farmers, many of whom don't have people coming up behind them, sons and daughters, to farm that land. And so they're trying to figure out, you know, what do we do? Do we sell to the mining company, or do we stay and fight?
Is that farmland, from what you've been able to discern, is that essentially lost forever as farmland once it's mined?
Well, I'm not a soil expert, but you know, if you talk to farmers, they will definitely say there's no way to actually reclaim the land, that this is not a renewable resource, that once you rip up soil, it's not the same. It's not going to grow the crops that it grew before.
So let's now turn to fracking, the stuff that this sand is going to be used for. We've been hearing about fracking for a long, long time in Illinois.
It's important to keep in mind that Illinois has been fracking for decades, for 70 or 80 years. The advent of the new high-volume hydraulic fracturing technology, which is a safe and proven technology that's been used in more than 30 states now for about 15 years. We happen to be located over the New Albany Shale, and so for the viewers, it's located kind of south of 64 and east of 70 in southeast Illinois, and it's got great economic opportunity for the state. It will be here one day, there's no doubt about it. We have the resource down there. It's going to create upwards of 50,000 good high-paying jobs, and not just in southeast Illinois, but your manufacturing jobs, your trucking jobs.
50,000 jobs.
50,000. And we were, as Senator Resin noted, we were pleased to participate in negotiations for about 2 or 3 years. And the final agreement was supported by folks like the Farm Bureau, the Illinois AFL-CIO, the Illinois Manufacturers Association, the Sierra Club, along with the governor and the attorney general. So we did a lot of work to make sure that we have safeguards in place, that we protect the air, ground, and water while allowing industry to develop. And we believe that that will occur, and it'll be a financial gain for the state of Illinois while creating jobs.
Julie, you have been reporting not only from LaSalle County, but you've also been down in southeast Illinois. Is it just as contentious, the fracking itself in those areas, as the sand mining is in LaSalle County?
Well, this really is a tale of two states. When you go down to southern Illinois, which I was just down there this week, you have people who are just dying to see fracking started. They're saying, oh my gosh, we need jobs, we need the money. And then in the, from Springfield on north, you have a huge anti-fracking contingent. There are definitely pockets of anti-fracking groups down in southern Illinois. But they're closer to the Shawnee National Forest, places that rely on tourism, and it's all anyone is talking about when you get down to southern Illinois.
And Mark, you say 50,000 jobs. In terms of the national output, where does Illinois stand? In other words, is Illinois going to be one of the leading production states? Is it going to be similar to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so the New Albany Shale in southeast Illinois, the geologist says closely resembles the Eagleford Shale in Texas. We're not going to be as much as for example, the Bakken Shale in North Dakota. But you look at the states, you look at Texas and North Dakota. I mean, North Dakota has an unemployment rate of 3% and almost $4 billion in the bank. We believe it's going to be an oil play, more oil than natural gas, and it's got the benefit. You know, as I drove up today, the price of gas is now about $2.70 a gallon. As more fracturing occurs, the prices come down. I know the state's getting close to announce a new fertilizer plant in the state of Illinois. Natural gas is 80% of the feedstock. So you're going to see a whole host of industries come, and consumers in Illinois and businesses are going to have a cheap source of energy for decades to come. And it was only 10 or 20 years ago, everyone said we're running out of natural gas. We're now the leading producer in the world of natural gas and oil thanks to hydraulic fracturing.
We just have 30 seconds left, Senator. Last word to you. In terms of the trade-off, obviously environmental damage, health concerns versus jobs and energy sufficiency, is the trade-off worth it?
Well, I think it's important to note that fracking has been happening. So what we're doing is regulating it. We want to make sure that the safeguards are in place because we, of course, want to be good stewards of the environment. But I do think that both can happen at the same time, and other states have shown that.
On that note, we have to end it. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. That wraps up this special presentation on sand fracking. I would like to thank Julie Buernow, Mark Denzler, Senator Sue Rezin for joining me today. And to learn more about our show and our stories and our guests, please log on to wycc.org and search for In the Loop. Until next time, I'm Chris Bury. Goodbye.